Alright, so this is kinda a continuation of a recent video I made. Should you work hard in your 20s or grind, or something like that? And in that video, I went over my main stats in the game of life and reasons for and against working on those stats in your 20s. And I also talked about the alternative, which was enjoying your 20s or grinding more. In this video, I'm going to react to some other articles I've seen that talk about the same concept of, why your 20s are the best years of your life. I'll give my reasons as to why I agree or disagree with them, as well as any other thoughts that come to mind. So, let's begin. Now, this article is written by your classic Starbucks latte basic chicks. I can tell based on the demeanor, as well as the fact you can see the author's name. So this plays into the fact I think it's a specific demographic that keeps saying how your 20s are your best years. Basically, it's the girls who are like, hoe around early on, settle down later, you'll figure out money later. Well, figuring out money earlier is always the better move, as I mentioned in that other video, and hoeing around implies you'll find someone who's willing to ignore the past. Most dudes won't look at that favorably, but I'll be mainly referring to career, money, aesthetics, and investments going forward. Not so much the relationship/love/hookup stat. I just got monetized, I don't want to lose that. I'll tread carefully with these topics, for now, until I know I'm safe, but I will for sure be talking more about this kind of stuff in the future. This article says your career is starting, which is a good thing. Yes, I kinda agree. Starting out in your career is always a nice feeling. It's something that almost seemed unattainable in my early years of uni, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one. So it's like they're saying it's the start of your life, which is a benefit. They say if you don't like it, you can leave since you don't have responsibilities. They basically say you're more flexible early in your career. I'm going to play devil's advocate here and argue that this is a bad thing. Now, I briefly touched on this in a prior video, but generally, earlier in your career, you have to put up with crap early on whilst you stack experience. And once you have enough experience and are more valuable to the labour market, you can leave for better conditions. I used the example of software engineers in that prior video, and I'll use it again. Tech job apocalypse aside, in early 2021/2022, I heard countless stories of software engineers who earned hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. They worked from home, they did chores and ran errands on company time. They didn't even work a full 40-hour week. What a dream job, hey? But this flies in the face of all those doom and gloomers talking about how bad their job is. Okay, so how come some people, like software engineers, have a job they love? Meanwhile, a lot of other people have jobs they hate. Simple, it's because software engineers have an in-demand skill set that the labour market wants/needs. And those that work jobs they hate have no choice to work jobs they hate because they don't have a valuable skill set that the labour market desires. So how does this play into the article and the topic of this video? Because this article implies it's as simple as just get another job. My argument is you're early in your career, thus you barely have any experience that the labour market desires. You won't have really much of a choice. Yes, some work environments can be better, but you'd switch for barely any extra increase in pay. That's assuming you're working in the same industry. If you switch industries, you have to start from the bottom. I'm an accountant. I have decent experience and have made a good chunk of progress in my CPA studies, which is my post-uni studies. Basically, it's like another education thing for accountants. So if I wanted to switch careers and become a plumber, for example, I start as an apprentice. I don't start out with my apprenticeship already done, the same way I am done with my accounting bachelor's degree. Vice versa. If a qualified plumber wanted to move into accounting, they don't start out with a completed bachelor's degree, the same way they have a completed apprenticeship. They start out with 0 credit points towards their degree. It's like switching Pokemon. The XP from your starter doesn't transfer over to your new Route 1 bird Pokemon. You have to start that XP grind from scratch. So what I'm saying is, yes, you can move around earlier in your career, but you won't have much choice. since you don't have any skills/experience the labor market wants. I strongly argue you have more flexibility in your 30s once you've gained more experience and skills. Using myself as an example, I've had 2 accounting jobs before the one I have now. The first workplace was pretty shocking. Story for another video. The second place was pretty decent, but this current place is so much better. But I am not allowed to work from home. I have to spend 5 out of 5 days in the office per week. Yes, they value me, hence why I'm getting promotions and pay raises, but I'm not indispensable to the point where I can demand any sort of hybrid schedule. Now, earlier on in my career, I never had any other job offers from other places, since I wasn't valued in the labor market. Now, I have had offers, since I am valued in the labor market. I have the flexibility to move around now that I've got some extra experience and education. My flexibility will only increase in the future as I become more valuable. Eventually, I will have the experience to gain skills as a finance manager. These roles have a hybrid schedule, unlike my current role, and they also pay a lot more. But I can only get these roles once I have had enough experience. I can't just job hop to these roles now. I'm not experienced enough, which is the vibe I'm getting from this article. Oh, you can just move jobs, it's easy. Yeah, it's easy if you have the skill set the labor market wants. If you're a year or less into your career, good luck switching jobs for substantially better conditions. I'm also running off the assumption that you will still work in the same industry. Example, you went to uni for accounting, so you'll still work in accounting. If this article is implying, oh, you don't like your marketing job? Don't worry, go and get another job in another field. Well, you spent 3 years at uni doing this. Is your next option to go back to uni and spend 3 years doing something else? What if you don't like that new one either? Now, I'll admit, I'm looking at it from a more cynical lens, but someone's got to play devil's advocate here and not just paint everything as a fairy tale. At the very least, if you choose a useful and in-demand career path, after 5 years, you'll be valued enough to negotiate more pay and better conditions in most cases, or at least some organization will have that for you. Maybe a brain surgeon has to work in a crappy hospital because there are no other hospitals around, but they get paid boatloads, so that at least softens the blow. At least you get to go home to your nice house that you have no trouble paying for each night, better than going to your cardboard box on the side of the street. This article also says you're making your own money for the first time via a job, which is funny because most stuff you see online tells you to escape the rat race, but whatever, not a focal point in this video. But the primary reason they'll talk about having money is so you can splurge it, which falls under the party category. Well, as I've mentioned earlier in this vid, sorry, I got the script wrong. As I mentioned in the prior video, asset prices like stocks and real estate will only get more expensive in the future. Yes, you can buy it at a later date, but it's cheaper now than it'll be in 5 years, and every following year after that. If you want to spend some of your money on some fun, by all means, but look at the wording here. Splurge on those, oh my, what word is that? Laubautens? Whatever that is. And taking your parents out for dinner. Another round of desserts? How much do you think you'll be earning that early in your career? With this kind of mentality, this person is going to have nothing left for savings/investments. Let's use some rough examples. Let's say they earn $60,000 a year, probably a bit high when you start out, but whatever. That's about $1,150 a week. There's obviously taxes. So let's say you're left with a net of $800 a week. Taking 3 people out for dinner with extra desserts, no doubt this type of person drinks alcohol too. So let's say $150 for dinner, $50 per person, including the meal, drinks, and another round of desserts. If anything, it'd easily be more than this, but let's just run with it. Now that's only $650 a week left. But this type of person said they splurge. No doubt they spend a lot at nightclubs. I don't know, maybe some simp dudes pay for your drinks, but let's just say $200 a week for nightclubs and whatever splurging they're talking about. Again, if anything, this figure would be higher. So now you're left with $450 a week. Are you paying rent? If so, there goes the rest of your money. If anything, you'd have to cut back elsewhere, and you're still left with groceries and petrol. Like, what about those? I've used some rough examples, but it helps paint the scene. This article says your 20s are the best years, as it allows reckless spending, for lack of a better term. Well, sure, you do you, but you'll be paying for it later down the track. Another point on this party thing, the end of point 5 says, party-loving self. Again, with the parties ain't cheap either. It's not like they're saying, you have more free time to go for walks in the park in your 20s. I've harped on this enough, but the main gist is, your 20s are the best because you can party. Well, sure, but you'll be paying for it later on. Yes, you're young and hot, but all that partying, 1, ages you badly. Trust me, I've seen it with quite a number of people in my life. And 2, costs a lot. I had a lot of parties in my later years of uni during 2018 and 2019, and although I didn't drink, it did cost me in terms of the fast food we'd have after going out and petrol to drive all the way to the clubs and whatnot, because I live in a small country town. It's quite a bit away from the nearby city. Yeah, it didn't exactly break the bank, and I'd legit work a 9-hour supermarket shift off only 2 hours of sleep from my clubbing the night before. Damn, those were rough. But imagine I did that once a week instead of like once a month. And if I drank too, it would have gotten really pricey. And you got to think, I was only working like part-time at a supermarket back then, so I wasn't on like $1,150 like we calculated earlier. It was probably more like $600 a week. Maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more, but like, I'm sure you know people in your personal life who just splurge so much on nights out. They are going to be paying for that really badly later on. The costs for drinks are even worse these days due to taxes on alcohol. Well, here in Australia anyway. Here in Australia, alcohols have other taxes, which means they cost more. Do you think the nightclubs are going to pass on this cost, or are they going to wear it themselves? Obviously, they're going to pass it on to you, the consumer. Not sure about other countries, but I imagine it's even pricier due to inflation in general, as well as the rest of the other items in your life. So the choice is yours. Party now, pay later. I know a lot of people don't even like parties that much anyway. I kind of like both. I'm down for a gathering/hangout, but I also dig doing my own thing. Chilling in the lounge room with my video game stuff, Sonic Boom, World War II documentaries, creepy/horror/true crime stuff on the TV whilst I surf the stock market, study for my CPA qualification, or work on a new YouTube video. But anyway, if you don't like parties anyway, then that just works in your favor. You can use that money you would have spent on alcohol/nightclubbing/entry to a club, whatever, to invest/save/whatever. I'm also assuming you aren't getting flat out drunk by yourself in your room and ordering Uber Eats, the same way you'd go to McDonald's after a night of clubbing. So if that is you, then my point is invalid since you'd be spending the same amount of money anyway. What I just said also ties into point 3 of this article. You have more me time. So you're not in school anymore. So your schedule has now been freed up. Yes, maybe you start working full-time, which has similar hours to school, but at least you have no homework after work. If you do, then I assume it's related to study, which ties back to what I said earlier about me with my CPA studies. It's a benefit for later in life, higher income and job stability. Actually, that was said in the prior video. Again, sorry, haven't updated this script. If you're at uni, yes, you have way more study, but at least it's on your schedule. You don't have to wake up early and rock up to a school. Yeah, maybe you have some classes here and there, but for the most part, study is on your time. Whereas later in life, the assumption is you have a family, which is less me time. But they're painting this as a bad thing, like a family eats into your me time, which is bad. Isn't having a family meant to be one of, if not the most rewarding thing? Then sacrificing some me time is a good trade-off in that case. Again, sounds like they're saying family is a lifelong chore. I mean, you could also just not have a family. That is an option, if you're going to consider a family this much of a burden on your life. Last point I'll talk about here, point 4, meeting new people completely different from you. Blah blah, making friends is often a daily thing in your 20s. Huh? A daily thing? Where are you going all the damn time? I made a lot of new friends in my uni days, but they were due to me knowing someone from high school who knew someone else at uni, and that other person was extroverted and made other friends, and one of those other friends was extroverted and made other friends, so I didn't really have to do any of the socializing myself, which is good for me. But again, this goes to the whole party a lot or meet new people, translation, new hookups. If you sleep around a lot, you'll likely be paying for it later in life. Generally, people of either gender aren't there's two genders. People of either gender aren't a fan of people who sleep around. Some don't care, sure, but you'd have to find that distinct part of the population. And even if you weren't worried about that, but still partied, you're literally paying for that too, with your money that could be used to stockpile investments that exponentially help later on in life. So that's enough for this article. I was all over the shop, but the gist of this article is you have more freedom. As I said, family is not a burden. You have freedom to move jobs early in your career, sure, but the conditions and pay don't get much better until you have experience and have valued skills that the labour market requires. Okay, next article. This one is from a man's viewpoint. Interesting. Let's see what the difference is going to be. Within the first paragraph, you can see it says, from a man's viewpoint, the 20s are a pivotal era, shaping the trajectory of one's life. Yep, correct. That's what I spent 40 plus minutes talking about in the other video. I am shaping the trajectory of my future, leveraging my 20s to do so. It goes on to say, in the early 20s, men often find themselves overlooked, almost invisible to the world. This obscurity, however, is a blessing in disguise. It's an opportune time for self-improvement and growth. By diligently focusing on yourself during these unseen years, you'll emerge in your late 20s as a man of substantial value and character. Yeah, so this falls under the whole category of men peak later in life. I'll make a video on that another time, the whole men peak later in life, or do you try and find someone to partner with when you're younger? All that stuff I'll talk about in its own designated video. Now, this point here, 20s are critical for several reasons. One being it's a period when your vitality is at its peak. Goes back to the whole you're fitter when you're younger type of deal. It's common to slow down / lose energy as you age. But this is the result of things like getting fatter and having more responsibilities. Well, if you keep your body fat in check, like I am, you won't have this issue. And you do generally have more responsibilities as you age, but again, it's more so talking about family. In terms of stuff outside of family, this can be true, but generally it's associated with more money. In my case, when I get a hybrid work routine and move out of home, when my house is finally built, that frees up so much extra time in my schedule. Additionally, once I'm done with CPA studies, I'm done with formal education as it relates to my career. So that's even more free time. No more spending so much time slaving over the CPA study books. If I'm going to do any sort of study on stock markets or something, it's on my own clock. So I'd have less responsibilities on that front as well. However, as my YouTube channel grows, at least I'm assuming it will, or I hope so anyway, that comes along with potential sponsors, meaning I have sponsor deadlines to hit, thus more responsibilities. I'll also be a better stock trader, so I'll have more to keep my eye on. I'll also be a landlord, so I'll have tenants and properties to manage, but those things are rewarding. Much the same way a family is extra responsibilities, but it's rewarding. So yes, you have more energy / your vitality is at its peak in your 20s, but in my opinion, a lot of that is due to the fact you're usually fitter at that age and you have less stuff going on. Next point, family obligations are minimal, thus you have more freedom and flexibility. So again, 20s are the most important period, or the best time of your life, due to no family. Why is having a family considered a burden? If you look at it that way, don't have a family. Simple. I suppose in this way they're saying stuff like, you can go travel at this time. Well, do you have the money for this? It'll tie into another video I'll make later on, and it'll be along the lines of, should you travel in your 20s or save that money? or invest that money or whatever. And if you've seen my recent videos, you can probably guess where I stand on that topic. Although I am a bit more on the fence with that. But again, I'll talk about that in the future video that I'll make on it. Last point, less attention on you. No reputation to uphold or fear of failure. Yeah, this is a good point. Like, you have time on your side to get back on your feet after any failures. If you have a family, you can't be gambling with your financial stability. It's like that Simpsons clip I showed in my True Value of Adonis School video. Flanders said Homer warned him about gambling his family's future on his little business idea.
No, you tried to warn me about gambling my family's future on some big enough poke. I didn't listen. Homer, you were a true friend.
If you try this in your 20s, generally you don't have any sort of responsibilities. I mean, I personally know people in their 20s with a family, but obviously this article isn't assuming that. But again, even if your business succeeds in generating profit, which in many cases it doesn't, would it out-earn a standard job, let alone career? And even then, you're playing a Nuzlocke. One bad critical hit to your business can mean game over, no matter how much effort you put into it early on. So these little bits of advice here: don't chase relationships. Yep, agreed. Let that happen organically. Otherwise, you're just trying to find anyone to fill the role as partner in your life, rather than finding someone you naturally jive with. Establish yourself first. High-value relationships will follow naturally. Yep, agreed. Although there is something to be said for going out there and meeting people, but even then, you'd want to present the best version of yourself to your prospective partner. I'm better off having a good career, my own place, my own investments, and a fit body when I meet someone, as opposed to having none of that, but a high body count, because I spent all that time chasing relationships or chasing hookups, but that stuff is a topic for a future video. If you couldn't tell, I have a lot of ideas for future videos. Stay tuned. Point 2 here, I've kind of talked about that before. Point 3, work times 3. Your 20s are for unwavering commitments to your goals. It's all about work and progress. Kinda agree, your life is your own. I do agree that working hard earlier on has much greater compound effects in the future, in case you couldn't tell from the other video I made about this topic, especially when you consider inflation pumping up the cost of everything. By the way, it's only going to get much worse. You can get onto the lifeboats early before everyone else drowns. But you can enjoy yourself. It's up to you to find that balance. Example, I'm recording this script on a Tuesday night. I cut my gym session by half an hour because I'm kind of overreaching in my training phase. I need to sort of dial it back. And plus, a lot of the equipment for the back half or the back quarter of my workout were taken anyway, so I'm like, I'll just leave now. Yesterday night, I watched Despicable Me 4 with my family. So that means because I was out last night, I didn't get time to work on my YouTube stuff. And going back to Friday night, I went out for dinner with some of my old high school friends. Yet another night, I couldn't work on this YouTube channel. And looking forward to this Saturday night, I might be hanging out with one of my other friends from my hometown. If it's not this Saturday night, it'll be one of the next following 2. But those are 3 nights gone from making a YouTube video. I could potentially get a video done in that time, depending on how short it is. So I potentially missed out on hitting the algorithm at the right time by not having another video out by then. But hey, I'm like more so enjoying my life with that sort of stuff. This kind of balance is totally acceptable to me. I do not regret that at all. I had a fun time at dinner with my high school friends. I enjoyed the movie. And no doubt I'm going to enjoy having pizza and hanging out at my mate's place. So once again, it's up to you to find that sort of work-life balance in your life. Next, prioritize health and strength. Your body is an investment that pays lifelong dividends. Agreed. Simply not being unhealthy saves you a lot in medical bills later down the track. Like, yeah, you'd be older by then, but instead of having to spend your dividend payments on your 3rd trip to the doctors in 2 months, you could be using that on a luxury cruise instead. All because you looked after your health in your earlier years. And that's not to mention the intangible benefits like how much it helps your mental health. Last point, avoid social media distractions. It's a time sink. It's a distraction, yada yada. Also agreed. However, when you have some sort of online brand, you kind of need to be on social media. But I get what this guy is saying. My social media usage has slipped over the years due to a variety of factors. One, I'm talking to a lot less people than I once did. So I'm on apps like Snapchat far less. Two, people I know don't post anywhere near as much anymore themselves. I'm 27 at the time of recording, so most people I know hover between the ages of 23 to 30. As you get older, people tend to post less on social media, me being one of them. I remember being told in Year 12 and early uni that I, quote, post too much on my Snapchat stories. Oh, okay, sorry, Mr. Social Media Police. Didn't realize you were the one in charge of my social medias. But nowadays, I barely post anything at all, like on my personal accounts. I used to be one of those guys that would post whatever they were studying, whenever they were at the gym, whenever they were at work, whenever they were at a social event. Now I very rarely do that. So with less of your friends/acquaintances posting, there's less reasons to be on social media. I even remember a former co-worker at my supermarket job once said, she was like an older lady in her 40s, and she's like, you never post anything on Facebook. I mean, that's because at the time, I mostly used Snapchat to talk/post. Didn't really use Instagram, but the fact she noticed that was interesting. I couldn't tell you who's an active poster or not on social media amongst my friend groups/acquaintances. 3, I enjoy other things more. When I'm sitting down relaxing on a Monday or Friday night, since those nights I have no scheduled gym session, I have some video game stuff on in the background whilst I'm working on a YouTube video or studying or sussing stock charts. Oddly enough, that's my relaxation rather than doom scrolling. So I've replaced social media usage with something that increases some useful stats in the game of life. So this avoiding social media thing is a good idea, but you may find you'll naturally gravitate away from it as you go on. So next up is an interesting paragraph. If you follow these guidelines, you're already ahead of the competition. Most people remain stagnant, caught up in unproductive activities, they're lazy, chasing girls, indulging in demonetizable word, and mindlessly scrolling through TikTok dances by teenagers. These are all valueless pursuits. Later, these same individuals cry about the intense competition, criticize the government for not providing freebies, and resent the wealthy. Their complaints are numerous, but they fail to recognize their own shortcomings in personal development and effort. This is a fantastic point. It basically encapsulates a lot of what I do. People remain stagnant. They don't increase their stats in the game of life. The stats in your video game character don't matter. Caught up in unproductive tasks? Yep, again, increase your stats in the game of life. Not in a video game or binging a Netflix TV series. They're lazy? Yep, hard work in the right direction pays off. Chasing girls? Yep, I talked about that in my optimal routine video and Pokemon is like real life video. Relationships/girls are a nuzlocke. The hard work can be wasted. Worry about girls after you've sorted the rest of your life out. Having financial stability and no girlfriend is a lot better than having a girlfriend and no financial stability and then she ends up breaking up with you later. Make sure you have something to show for your time. Again, the optimal routine video goes over that. Scrolling TikTok dances, yep, again, social media stuff. You can have some downtime, but you're better off using that time more effectively. Now, this is a fantastic bit here. Later, these same individuals cry about the intense competition, criticize the government for not providing freebies, and resent the wealthy. Their complaints are numerous, but they fail to recognize their own shortcomings in personal development and effort. 110% correct. I can see it in my own personal life. People I knew who were actually ahead of me in life in my early 20s are now bitching and whinging about how the government should do more. They should tax the rich. It's always the lazy people complaining about this. The government is filled with inept idiots. But I am using that to my advantage. My regulars have heard me talk time and time again about my real estate investment. Well, most of the future growth in this literally relies on the government's incompetence. If the government reduced red tape, drastically slowed migration, changed tax laws amongst other policies, housing in Australia would not continue to drastically increase in value. but they won't. So I'll take advantage of it by getting into real estate earlier. There's also a lot of resentment towards people like Bezos and Musk. Well, Bezos worked in a good finance job and also grinded on Amazon in his early years. Yes, he had help from his parents, help that I don't have access to, but that's life. I'm sure my cousins in the Philippines would love to sleep in my bed every night as opposed to the shacks that they live in. There's always someone who has it better. There's always someone who has it worse. As for Elon, he worked 7 days a week for years on end to get Tesla to work. How about you, Mr. and Mrs. Whinge-a-lot? When's the last time you worked 7 days a week? Yes, these guys had some advantages that most of us don't, but don't act like you would have been just like them if you had access to their resources. These same people complaining literally have better resources than I do. Their parents have more money, they live closer to everything, aka they've spent a lot less time commuting in their life than I have, which is more time for study/gym/working on something else, etc. And yet, they're substantially worse off. How? How did you fumble that head start you had over me? Well, you got lazy, you got complacent, you were too busy living in the moment and enjoying your 20s and living your best life. And now, well, you're paying for it. That bill has come due, and it was quite an overdue bill. It's racked up some nasty interest charges that you're going to have to pay for now. Also, do you think taxing the rich works? Do you know how they're rich? Because they own assets. There's heaps of tax deductions available for assets. That aside, even if someone owned a $100 million house, they're already paying stuff like high land taxes, council rates, etc. We all pay that stuff in my state of Victoria, but the bigger the house/land, the higher the taxes. They're literally already being penalized for their wealth. What about owning stocks? The super rich mostly got there due to owning a lot of valuable stocks. Well, you can't tax unrealized gains. Otherwise, unrealized losses would also have to be considered a tax deduction for that to be fair. It's why you see articles like, Mark Zuckerberg lost $10 billion overnight or whatever. Like back in 2022 when Meta's earnings bombed, he didn't have $10 billion stolen from his bank account. The value of his stock, which he has not sold, just plummeted in value. It can go back up in value. And whenever you see those articles pop up on social media, a lot of reactions are people laughing. Like, do you idiots understand money/investments or not? Well, obviously you don't. No wonder you're poor and crying about rich people all the time. If they imposed a tax on something rich people have, accountants and tax lawyers would just skirt around that. Anyway, back to the point this article made, they failed to recognize their own shortcomings in personal development and effort. Yep, that's it. What career did you pick in your 20s? Did it allow a greater number of income to be made over a standard job? Did you work another job to stack a bit more money for your future? What about gym? Did you laze around all the time and now you're fat? I suppose everyone with abs is on steroids, hey? What about investments? Did you bother to start learning how the economy/financial markets work and how it impacts your life? Or was that too boring for you and now you're wondering why there's rampant inflation and house prices are unaffordable? If you don't want to work for the man or be a wagey or participate in the rat race, then what business idea do you have? Did you make a start earlier, or did you leave it later on when there's even more competition? I'm not denying that in some cases, people's circumstances were extremely difficult, but more often than not, it's their own fault for the predicament they're in. So, those are my thoughts on some articles as to why your 20s are the best years of your life. One article has a more relaxed approach. Your 20s are the best because you can do what you want, which means party a lot. Another article says your 20s are the best years of your life because you can do what you want. That means work on your craft, grind a lot, set yourself up for your future. Interesting how there was two different perspectives, one written by a female, the other written by a male. That'll play into a future video idea, no doubt. What are your thoughts on your 20s? Are they the best, or are your 30s the best? What are your plans for your 20s? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. That is all.